This is a Spirit of Truth Radio Network original program.
The 2 million members of the Knights of Columbus, then May 27th was an important day. It was the day that the Vatican announced that Father Michael J. McGivney, founder of the Knights of Columbus, was elevated from venerable servant of God, blessed. And to talk to us today and to tell us about that process and more about Father McGivney is Brian Caulfield. Brian, welcome.
Oh, nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
And as always, my producer, Dave Imhof, who will be sharing some of the duties on this side of the microphone. Hey, Dave.
Good evening. How you doing today, Dave?
I'm doing well. Brian, I want to start with you. Father Michael J. McGivney was quite an extraordinary man. He was going through what we're going through in his lifetime. He went through a pandemic, which unfortunately took his life. But what are some of the heroic virtues that he demonstrated in his lifetime that are being recognized today?
Yes, well, thank you. Father McGivney lived in the late 19th century. He was a priest of the diocese then of Hartford, born in Waterbury, grew up in Waterbury, the oldest of 13 children, 7 of whom survived to adulthood. He was obviously, the family was large, and his parents were Irish immigrants. His father worked in the factory in Waterbury, and after Michael finished his schooling at age 13, he went to work in the factory also, in a spoon factory in Waterbury. And he worked there for 3 years, and then he finally was able to hear God's call. It was to the priesthood, but it was a difficult decision because as the oldest boy, the oldest son, obviously he was expected to help support the family, the large family. And he went through seminary, and in 1877 he was ordained a priest in Baltimore. Actually, he had studied the only seminary at the time, Catholic seminary at the time in the U.S. was in Baltimore. So he graduated there, was ordained by Archbishop Gibbons, who later became the first cardinal of the U.S., and then returned to Waterbury to have his first public mass. Father McGivney, his father had died while he was in seminary, and we think that this is one of the experiences that shaped Father McGivney's life, having the father die at a young age and the family, left without their breadwinner. Fortunately, with the many McGivney children, they were able to chip in and, work and support the family. But as he found out in his priesthood, there were many families who would lose the breadwinner and would not be able to support themselves. So he was assigned to St. Mary's Parish, which is still there in New Haven, and he was an assistant priest. And there was a great amount of anti-Catholicism at the time. This is the 1870s, 1880s, and know-nothings. There would be advertisements for jobs, with Irish need not apply. There was anti-immigrant kind of sentiment, certainly, and the Irish were not looked as very promising immigrants at the time. But Father McGivney went on to found the Knights of Columbus when he was still an assistant priest in the basement of St. Mary's. The first meetings were in late 1881. He gathered together some of what we call the go-ahead men, the Irish men of the parish and of the city. And these were men, who were moving ahead by, sheer hard work and ambition. And obviously staying close to their faith. And the amazing thing is that they saw in this young priest, he's only 28 years old, 29 years old, they saw in him someone who could be their leader. And these were men who were, had professional jobs. They were in police service. They were in lower levels of government. One was the head of the New Haven jail. And so these were men who, had professions, and older men. Some of them were Civil War veterans. The Civil War just having ended less than 20 years earlier. So it's amazing that they saw in this young priest someone who could be their leader. And so I think there was something about Father McGivney that would draw people to him. There was he was known as someone who was reserved, but also someone who didn't hesitate to speak up when the occasion warranted. Mm-hmm. So we got these men together, and eventually they formed what they called the Knights of Columbus. I know Columbus is not very popular in popular culture these days, but you have to understand he was the foremost Catholic figure in America at the time, recognized by all people as heroic in discovering the New World and going forward with that. So by using the name Columbus, the men were saying, we are Catholic. And in fact, Protestants, remember that you wouldn't be here if it weren't for a Catholic hero like Christopher Columbus, and that Catholics could be good citizens as well.
Let me ask you a question. The political and social climate back in the 1800s was very much about secret societies. Now, the Masons were very, very popular, as they still are today. Did Father McGivney take that into mind to create some sort of an organization to keep Catholics from going to become Masons?
Yes, so that was one of his stated goals. He said we need to found a Catholic society, benefit society, to discourage Catholic men from joining certain banned secret societies, meaning mainly the Masons, and offer equal, if not better, benefits. And at the time, basically these were burial benefits. As I said, especially the immigrants who were working very hard jobs on the railway, in the mines, and many of them were dying young. So, excuse me, that's my phone. And so Father McGivney it was really a two-pronged thing: to keep men from joining these societies and to help families, especially when a breadwinner died young. They would have a benefit. At that time, I think it was $500 or $1,000, which was a lot of money, for a family, to the widow, and to help, with the children also. And in that day, if a widow could not show that she could provide for her children, the good, friendly Protestant societies would see that these children were provided for in a good Protestant family. And of course, that meant the loss of faith for these children in many cases. So that was a big concern, Father McGivney, that men would not join these societies. But he understood that you just couldn't preach, don't join these societies. You had to give a practical, way for the men to get the benefit that they would from these societies and still remain close to the Catholic faith. And that was a hallmark of Father McGivney,
which shows,
he just didn't preach.
It shows how forward-thinking
he showed men how to live the faith, and he gave them the opportunity, the practical way of solving their problems.
Mm-hmm. But again, it shows how forward-thinking he was, because so many years, decades before Vatican II, Father McGivney was putting the laity in charge of church functions and making a way for us to really be able to live the true Catholic life.
And that's very true. Another good point. As you said, Vatican II, with its teaching on the universal call to holiness and the lay vocation, we understand now that, okay, the holy vocation of priesthood and religious life, but also every Catholic has a vocation to marriage, to consecrated lay life, to single life. And Father McGivney saw that. The amazing thing is, when they formed the Knights of Columbus, and our Founders Day is March 29th, so that's the day we remember each year that the Connecticut State Legislature recognized the Knights as a insurance entity in the state. When he founded them, the 24 men acclaimed him. They wanted him to be, the head, what we would call today the Supreme Knight. And he said, no, this is a lay organization. I don't want this to be another clerical organization run by the priests. I'm here to help. I'm the spiritual director. And they said, well, look, you're more organized than all of us, and you're very good with handling, the money of the parish. At least we'll make you the Supreme Secretary. And then, kind of until we get on our feet. And he agreed to that. Mm-hmm. But 2 years in, when he saw the Knights are on a strong footing, he actually wrote a letter to Supreme Knight James Mullen and said, I am, resigning my role as Supreme Secretary. I will be Supreme Chaplain, which is more in keeping, with my clerical status. Mm-hmm. So I think that was amazing, especially in that day, where kind of the Irish Catholic priest was, all things to all men. He was the priest of the parish. He got people jobs. He was your spiritual aid. He filled like every need of the immigrant people. And here was Father McGivney saying, no, this is a lay organization, and it will be a lay organization. Priests are welcome, priests are chaplains, but as far as the organization and the leadership, this is a lay organization, and we see that right to this day.
Well, it speaks to the man and his humility.
Yes, amazing humility. And a few personal notes, if I may, about Father McGivney. I was just talking to some people who work at the Supreme Council where I work, and about Father McGivney. In fact, planning an issue of Columbia Magazine on Father McGivney. And we said, what is it that really? It's some of the personal things. There was a blind man, I'm not even sure he was Catholic in that day, who would just come to St. Mary's to hear what he would say. That voice, he just wanted to hear that voice. It was so, it was firm, but it was comforting. It was challenging, but it was encouraging. All these things that Father McGivney had. And there was another case of the James Chip Smith. He was someone who had mistakenly, or maybe he was drunk, and the local policeman was trying to bring him into the paddy wagon, as they would call it in those days. Kind of not a great term, but so Chip pulled the gun out of the cop and shot him, whether accidentally or not. Of course, he was arrested, put in jail in New Haven, and Father McGivney visited him, Chip Smith, on death row almost every day. And this young man, he was like 22 or 23. He turned from a very hard, away from the faith through Father McGivney. And, he said on the day he died, Father McGivney had Mass celebrated right in the cell. And Chip said, don't grieve for me, Father. It's through your ministrations, your priestly ministrations, that I am confident of heaven now. And, I have no fear, going to the gallows. So. And another story that's kind of very touching is one of the daughters of the prominent Protestant minister in New Haven, Elisa Harwood. Unbeknownst to her parents, she was sneaking off on Sundays and going to St. Mary's to hear Father McGivney. Eventually, he received her and baptized her into the church. And eventually she told her parents, which was kind of a scandal. obviously the most prominent Protestant minister, his daughter joining the Catholic Church. And unfortunately, there was as we said, the flu, and, people that know antibiotics. So this young lady died at a young age in her 20s. And, she was lying in the home, kind of for people to visit. And, the mother said, well, we really should invite that young priest to come. Our daughter we know is Catholic, and maybe he, would have some ministration, some prayers that she would really want him to be at her side. So they sent a message, and Father McGivney went into the big estate house. It's still there, adjacent to the Protestant church right on the New Haven Green, the most prominent church in the city. And by all accounts, just very humble, thanked expressed his condolences, made no sense of like he was coming in, as a superior, very humbly said the prayers of the dead, and, left and gave he said, and his parting words were, if there is anything you would ever need from me, do not fail to call, the way they spoke back in the 1800s, especially in a formal situation. And, Dr. Harwood, the minister, actually wrote about that, how impressed he was by this young priest who just by his very attitude and his humility just gave comfort even to the parents.
Wow.
So those are just some of the very personal stories that have come down about Father McGivney.
And Brian, I don't think that the stories end there, because I'm looking at the Father Michael J. McGivney Guild newsletter, which I get. Yes. And I believe you're the editor of it, aren't you?
I am the editor of that newsletter. I work at I'm vice postulator for the cause, which means I help, investigate any miracles. I help promote the cause. I work full time at the Supreme Council headquarters in downtown New Haven. And, but yes, that's one of the things I do, is put together the newsletter.
Well, I'm looking at the one from July through September 2020. And some of those personal side notes that you were just talking about, Father McGivney, how he was so involved with individuals. I'm looking at the favors reported from in the newsletter that you published, and there's some really, really stunning stories of this COVID-19 recovery. There's a mutism and autism story here.
Well, I think what you're hitting on there, Dave, is who Father McGivney is for us today.
Exactly.
I mean, we know back in his day what a wonderful priest and a wonderful minister of God that he was, and comforted people and gave the sacraments, and, gave last rites to the dead, to the dying. And, but, we have to know that, especially now with this miracle, that only God can produce a miracle, as we know, through the intercession of Father McGivney, that this is that God has confirmed that Father McGivney is indeed among the blessed in heaven. And Father McGivney is indeed a worthy intercessor, someone we can call upon in our needs. And I always say to people, with the Guild, we want to hear about, not just your miraculous things that happen or amazing things that happen. We want to hear about the everyday things that happen through the intercession of Father McGivney.
Oh, sure. And you have some of those.
These may never, we know that they will never be considered miraculous by the Vatican, but that doesn't mean that Father McGivney was not involved and that he isn't still. So I want to encourage people, if you're not a member of the Guild, go to fathermcgivney.org website. You can sign up right there. It's free. You get the quarterly newsletter that Dave was just talking about. It's a wonderful resource on learning more about Father McGivney and about his work today in the world and in the lives of Catholics. So that's fathermcgivney.org. Also, a great benefit, if you're a member of the Guild, you are remembered every week in a prayer, in a Mass offered by Father Gabriel O'Donnell, who was the original postulator for the cause. So all you have to do is put in your name, address, and press the send button on the website, and you're a member, and you will be remembered weekly. And then you also can send in. There's a button there on the website to send in petitions, and we get some every day. People as serious as cancer, very serious cancer, and other things. Looking for a job, someone hoping to sell a home. Someone just wishing to pray that their son or daughter will come back to the faith. These are the kind of favors that Father McGivney is famous for.
Yes. So we know that Father McGivney will be, there will be a mass for his beatification.
Yeah, beatification. Yeah.
And we're expecting to have that when and possibly where?
Yeah, we're expecting to have that in the fall, and in Hartford, possibly the cathedral. So, this is all in the planning. I'm kind of learning that, finding and getting a miracle approved is one thing, but trying to get everyone together on the same page as far as location and date and time.
Which one's harder, Brian?
I won't say, but no, we're working. Everyone's working together on this, which is very nice. The Archbishop Blair and his team, and then of course the Supreme Knight Carl Anderson and our team with the Knights of Columbus. So we're working together. So the mass will be in the fall, and it will be the elevation, and Father McGivney to the role, to the state of blessed beatification. That's one step before canonization, which is sainthood. In order to reach that level of sainthood, we would need another approved miracle. And usually the miracles, today are almost exclusively some sort of medical, physical healing, which was the case. Actually, we should talk about the miracle that's bringing Father McGivney to this point. So the miracle that was approved by Pope Francis on announced May 27th, I call it the perfect Knights of Columbus miracle. I mean, there's no question about Father McGivney's intercession on this. It's a number of points that the Knights are very dedicated to. We have our ultrasound initiative, where we, pregnancy centers, promote, show women, who are thinking about abortion, their unborn baby, and many of them change their mind with God's grace. So this miracle involves an unborn child in the womb of its mother, and it was discovered through ultrasound at about 19 weeks that this child had a fatal condition called fetal hydrops, where the major organs filled with fluid. It was such a severe case that the doctors, and this is down in Tennessee, at a prestigious university hospital in Nashville, the doctors, the highest level doctors there examined the case, and they said, this child has no chance. We've never seen such a severe case of hydrops. It's a late onset. He also has coarctation of the aorta, which is complicating. And he also has trisomy 19, which is Down syndrome. So they advised, or they offered early termination, as they put it. We know is abortion.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Of course, this was a good Catholic Knights of Columbus family. The father actually is a general agent selling insurance, for the Knights of Columbus. And of course, they declined, the offer of early termination. And they said, whatever God wants for this child and for our family, we will accept, but, we're not going to take any action against, the birth of this child, the life of this child.
Yeah.
So, yes, and then they started praying to Father McGivney. They've already had a devotion to Father McGivney. I should mention that this was the 13th child for the family. The mother was 43 years old at the time she was pregnant. And of course, they had many children at home, a couple of children already out of the home, grown and off on their own.
So this was an older couple?
An older, what would they call it? That's a risk factor, as they will tell you, 43 years old pregnancy. Probably not too surprising that there were some complications. But some women delivered at that age with perfect, no health issues. So they went through, they prayed to Father McGivney. And a couple of weeks later, when they went for another visit, there was a doctor who had not seen Michelle. Her name is Michelle Shackle. Had not seen her, was a part of the team, looked at the ultrasound that the expert ultrasonographer had done, and, looked and said, oh yeah, 21 weeks. Well, the baby's coming along pretty well. Looks like a perfect baby. And Michelle kind of said, doctor, do you know who I am? Oh, wait a minute. Are you I'm the one with the eye drops baby. And she said, I don't see any eye drops here. And eye drops is diagnosed through ultrasound. So then they called the ultrasound technician back in, let's do this again and again, So then they called in, the doctor who had seen her before, who was the chief doctor of the department, neonatal department. And she said, wow. And Michelle said, well, we've been praying for a miracle. And they said, well, I think you've gotten it. So then,
Beautiful.
it was amazing. The child was delivered a few weeks early, 31 weeks, not because of any high drops or any fatal condition, but because there looked to be a lack of blood flow through the placenta that might have compromised the child's health. So they delivered early by cesarean. Amazingly, Michelle's first cesarean out of 13 deliveries, and the child had Down syndrome. Now, and coarctation, which is a narrowing of the aorta. So at 7 weeks, they kept the child in the hospital. At 7 weeks, they did surgery on this baby to correct the aorta, and he survived that, and eventually went home. I think after 10 or 11 weeks. The family lives outside of Nashville, Tennessee. Obviously, a little piece of land with many children running around, and I heard about the story as vice postulator. Through our insurance people, and they said, why don't you investigate this for a possible miracle for Father McGivney? So I went down to Nashville and visited with the family, and saw, I think Michael was they named him Michael McGivney Shackle. His middle name is McGivney, in honor of Father McGivney, obviously. And so I met with the parents, Daniel and Michelle Shackle, and I said, well, one of the questions that's going to come up when they do investigation at the Vatican is, why was this child healed only of one condition? And this child had, also had trisomy, Down syndrome. Why was he not healed of that? Is this truly a full and complete healing? Because that's one of the conditions of accepting it at the Vatican, is that the healing has to be spontaneous, full, complete, and lasting, right? So I said, they might ask, why was he not healed of that? And they looked at one another, like almost in disbelief, like, how could he ask this question? And I'm thinking, oh gosh, did I hit on a sore point? Is this like this point of contention between them? And they turned to me and said, literally in the same voice, we never prayed that he be healed of Down syndrome. We thought it would be a blessing for our family, because these children are so full of love that, sometimes we're worried that with such a big family, we don't get to express love enough in our family. But now we have little Mikey, and he's going to be like a little bundle of love. And it is. They call him Little Mikey. I've seen a video. I've met him since then, been down there. And he's influenced the lives of his older siblings. Now get this. One daughter, who just graduated high school this past spring, she's going to study to be a special education teacher because of Mikey. She said, I love these children so much. I want to take care of them. And one of the boys, who's I think a year or two older, last year he had entered college seminary in Texas at the University of Dallas, thinking, of a call to the priesthood. And he says, I never would have thought that this was possible until Mikey came into my life, and I realized that our life is short. We need to choose the highest good that we can in life. And what higher good is that than to serve the people of God through the priesthood? So
Thanks be to God.
yeah,
Thanks
it's
be to God.
amazing. It's an amazing story. So what is
A lot of good. I'm sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
No, just kind of sum up. What are the nights? Nights are involved in ultrasound, right? This was a diagnosis through ultrasound. The nights do amazing work every year with mentally disabled children. Children with Down syndrome and other conditions like that, through Special Olympics and all the other services we do. This child is a Down syndrome child. The nights are involved, of course, in the insurance, and the father is an insurance agent helping families protect their families in the event of an early death. So these are all Knights of Columbus issues that, and of course, the unborn, respect, turning down abortion. That's our pro-life postulate. So those four things.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a Knights of Columbus miracle.
Well, our Down syndrome brothers and sisters really, like you said, they do show us just unbelievable amount of love. I mean, they're just the happiest people, and hats off to the people at the Knights of Columbus that work with the Special Olympics. So
yes, yeah, we will not let these children, fall through the cracks.
No,
and
no.
It's been a great devotion of so many nights, and our supreme night, the ethic of life and support of life. When we realize, you just can't tell a woman, don't have an abortion, in the spirit of Father McGivney, finding the practical solution, to a seemingly insuperable problem, right? So we have the ultrasound initiative. We have, the homes that take care of women who have a crisis pregnancy. So many support that the Knights give to the pro-life and to women who are experiencing problems of this sort. And so again, and as I said, in the spirit of Father McGivney, who always found, if there was a problem that might take people away, that might lead them to sin, that might, destroy their faith, he said, it's not enough just to preach to them. Don't do this. You have to give them a practical solution that will help them do the right thing and grow in virtue.
Correct. Yeah. I want to go back to talking about the Father Michael J. McGivney Guild with Dave Imhof, because Dave has he's really been promoting it. Dave's a district deputy in the Knights of Columbus. And Dave, what have you been doing to promote the guild?
Well, we certainly wanted to build up the membership in the guild, and we tried. Well, we had basically, I'll call it a membership drive at our parish, and this happened actually just as COVID-19 hit. We were planning on having pulpit talks at all our masses and having a table set up in the hall after mass, and explain about the guild and how it would help the cause of Father McGivney. And so as it turned out, that got preempted by COVID-19. We ended up doing that virtually, which actually led to I think this conversation. We put some notice in the bulletins about the Father McGivney Guild and asking folks to sign up and how they can sign up. But the business manager at our parish said, "Hey, why don't we have some kind of a recording or something that somebody can click on and listen to?" Because everything was virtual. We're just streaming masses. Our bulletins are online, etc. So he said, "Hey, why don't we click on something?" So, and that's how we led to this conversation, Brian. That's kind of the background. That's how that kind of started. But the question I'll ask you, Brian, is how is the membership in the McGivney Guild important to the cause for canonization for Father McGivney. Could you explain that to us?
Yes, well, it shows, the membership in the Guild shows popular support and popular devotion to Father McGivney. And we have just about 175,000 members. So this has been going on for 20 years. The cause was opened in 1997, so 23 years. Shows you that, patience and hard work pay off. So the membership in the Guild is important also for people who are praying for the cause. So when you join the Guild, you get a little starter package, and what you get is a little life history and of Father McGivney. You get a prayer card for the prayer of canonization of Father McGivney. You get a booklet telling a little bit about who the Knights are and what they do, and also about St. Mary's Church, why that is important in the history of Father McGivney and the history of the Knights. So joining the Guild, it's, as I said, it's no cost. You get many benefits, and perhaps the greatest benefit is knowing that you're part of this great cause of this great American, American-born priest who is going to be honored very soon in beatification. And God willing, your prayers will lead to the second miracle that's needed for canonization. We're very much looking forward to that.
Dave, I'd like to ask another question of Brian, and that is, as it seems you're well into the whole process here for the cause of canonization for Father McGivney, Brian. Can you give us insight? Are there other proposed miracles that are in the works, more than one that are to the Vatican or something, or would that be tipping the hand or too much?
Well, that's a good question, and you get asked that a lot. And the thing is, when the miracle was approved back in May, any other miracle or that we might have thought of proposing for a second miracle, that gets wiped away. The clock starts again, in a sense. So as of May 27th, anything we had, holding in the background, like if this one didn't go through, we would propose a second one. That's null and void now. We can't dip back to that. We have to go forward. So we're hoping very much, for a report, soon. We learn that it does take time. But to answer your question directly, even if we did have something that we thought was a miracle and the holding as our number 2 miracle, it wouldn't count. It's start over, a clean slate, and which I think is good. I mean, if I've learned one thing, being vice postulator over these years, it's that the Vatican's standards are very high and understandable, because they don't want to approve something that may, be questioned, and also it's very thorough. We put forward, I first learned about this miracle in 2016. The child was born, May 15th, 2015. I first learned about it early 2016. I went down to visit the family mid-2016. We realized that, yes, this would probably be something that the Vatican, would likely approve. And then in Nashville, that diocese had to hold what they call the tribunal, which essentially is a court hearing, calling witnesses. They called the parents. They had to prove 2 things. One is a medical issue, that this was indeed a healing that does not have any natural or medical or scientific explanation, right? And the doctors don't have to say this is a miracle, right? All they have to say is, we have no medical explanation for this. It's totally out of our realm. It was totally surprising. It was totally, not expected, things like that.
Does it have to be does it have to be a medical issue? I mean,
It doesn't have to be a medical issue, but that seems to be almost exclusively what the Vatican considers because, with medical things, you have a lot of empirical evidence, right? You have diagnoses, you have CAT scans, you have ultrasounds, you have, expert medical opinions. You have all these, like you're building a record. With other kinds of miracles, let's say, what would, like an emotional healing or someone, who won the lottery, you know what I'm saying? These things are hard to prove, that it wasn't just chance, that it wasn't, something natural. So I would have to say, almost exclusively when you read about these miracles today, at least, they go with the medical because there's just so much evidence and it's irrefutable. When you get like 3 or 4 secular doctors at the secular hospital saying, we have no explanation for this. It just shocked us out of our boots, so to speak. That's pretty good testimony.
Sure.
So once they get the medical,
you won't find a like a Saint Rita of Cascia who brought dueling parties together. You won't find a social issue to be miraculous.
Yeah, I mean, you could try, but where would you get the absolute proof that there wasn't some other explanation? Right.
So.
So anyway, just to answer that question, yes, for whatever reason, and I think for the reason that, these days that medical procedures are just so exact, precise, and documented. It's the strongest. And after you get the medical issue, then you have to look to the issue of intercession. Was it truly Father? Okay, this was a miracle, but was it truly Father McGivney's intercession? And this can be a sticking point too. Then you have to have people testify. People closest to the issue. I prayed to Father McGivney. I prayed exclusively to Father McGivney. Right? I didn't slip in St. Anthony. I prayed to Father McGivney in the morning and at night. Prayed to St. Anthony. That kind of thing. The only exception to that is you can pray to the Blessed Mother, because she's assumed to be the intercessor in all, miracles, since all prayers go through her, the mediatrix of all graces. So if you say, I prayed to Father McGivney, to Jesus Christ, to God my Father, and the Blessed Mother, okay, that's fine. But if you say, well, I prayed to Father McGivney, but, I also prayed to St. Anthony and St. Joseph, no, okay, that's not going to fly. So that's why I always tell people, who say, how can we get, I say, well, do 2 things. Be healed of something very serious where there's no explanation, and 2, pray to Father McGivney exclusively and the Blessed Mother.
Brian, is it one person praying for the intercession, or is it multiple people? Or, I mean, if 2 or 3 people prayed exclusively for Father McGivney's intercession, and then other people prayed, to other saints. How's that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a judgment call. I mean, in the Vatican, for the medical thing, they have a team of medical experts, from the medical faculties of Rome, study the case once it's presented, and they make their decision. And then it will go to the theologians, and they would be the chief theologians from the pontifical academies in Rome. They come and they study that aspect of it. And they only get it if the medical people, like the first hurdle is the medical. Because look, if it's not a miracle, there's no sense in, it's not a medical miracle, there's no sense in trying to figure out whether there was intercession. So then it goes to the theologians, and okay, this is a judgment call to some degree. Okay, they want to look at the main actors in the case. In this case, it would be the parents, right? Did they pray exclusively to Father McGivney? What evidence is there of that? Luckily, Daniel and Michelle, made notes about this, and they sent emails to people about, we are praying to Father McGivney, please join us in doing this. Daniel, of course, sent an email to all his agents in Tennessee and said, here's the case with my son unborn. we're praying for a miracle, Father McGivney, please join me. And Michelle homeschools, not surprising, with 12, 13 children, right? She's in a homeschool group, many families. And so she sent out an email to her whole network of homeschool moms. This is the thing, pray to Father McGivney. And then they all sent back emails saying, we're praying to Father McGivney, blah, 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 blah. And this is before they even knew about, it had to be exclusive. So we have all that email testimony, which is wonderful, right? In other cases I've read about, there's a healing, okay, maybe the person prayed, exclusively Father McGivney, his wife, his children, his immediate family, and that might be enough. Just the core people who are involved and most interested in the case have to testify and prove in some way that their intercession was Father McGivney. So, if it happened that, your friend down the block happened to pray to St. Anthony, well, that's not really too connected to the case, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a judgment call. And of course, like all intercession, the people closest to the case are the ones who are most responsible and, for this.
Yeah, I was just thinking about when, more than one person, multiple people, if you get all kinds of people, like the general agent, shared it with his, field agents, et cetera, et cetera. So he tried to get a lot of people to pray. I have a friend of mine that just recently passed away from cancer, kidney cancer, and we were praying for him. And, we were asking, and when he was diagnosed, it was stage 4, it was metastasized. Mm-hmm. So, we got the council praying, he was on the list, but we would specifically pray for Mark, et cetera. You probably, I don't know if you can answer this question, but maybe you could comment, first of all, you pray to Father McGivney for his intercession, but of course it's God who performs a miracle. Right. Father McGivney, if he hears, he, goes and petitions to God to, perform this miracle. But more people praying, is it more loud, or, is that helpful, or maybe it doesn't matter, but I suspect that Father McGivney in this case hears us and intercedes for us, but it's up to God's will. That's actually in the prayer. It's up to God's will as to, if his servant is glorified here on earth. Any comments on those thoughts, Brian?
Well, I mean, look, getting more people to pray is always a good thing. Obviously we know, in a sense, like all worthy prayers are answered. So I would never discourage anyone, don't get involved because it might hurt the cause or something. No, I would say the more people involved in praying, that's why we encourage membership in the Knights and membership in the Guild. So, yeah. But, as we know, it's a mystery. It's ultimately up to God's will. Why does one person get healed and not another? Why does, one, I don't know how much more time we have, but, part of this process has been, there have been 2 cases that have gone to the Vatican previous to this that were not, they got knocked down in the first level of the medical commission. They were not deemed, miraculous. There's one case of a Dominican brother who had cancer and was actually in hospice and was healed. But that case, was not accepted at the Vatican. And a second case that I was directly involved in very much was a night in the Philippines. I had to go over there and investigate this whole case, but he had been, it was a dispute. He's a fisherman out way up in the northern Philippines on the South China Sea. And, he would go out and they had like fishing areas. and he was accused, which wasn't the case, but because he caught more fish than his neighboring, in the other, fishing wells, that they accused him of stealing. And so they sent gunmen and shot him. He got shot 13 times at point blank range. He survived, and he was a knight, and he prayed the whole time. He had the Knights of Columbus Rosary, and he prayed the whole time to Father McGivney. And he's back fishing now, but that was like 9 years ago. This happened. We thought it was miraculous, but there were just too many, I guess there were too many questions about, what caliber of gun, what kind of bullet, where was he hit exactly. That was turned away. So I think it gives strength to the fact that this miracle went through, because there were two other very strong cases that, I'm convinced were miraculous, but maybe just didn't meet the high standards, didn't have enough proof. So to me, there's no question about this one. They approved it almost unanimously, and the theologians, it was a slam dunk on the intercession. So I think we can all take heart from this. If you want kind of what a takeaway from this is that, as Knights of Columbus, as Catholics, we can seek the intercession of the saints. We are heard, whether our prayers are answered in the way that we want. At least we know that we are always being heard. Take consolation in our brothers and sisters in heaven who have gone before us. I think of Father McGivney as really, I worked so closely on his cause, as really a friend. I could almost hear his voice sometimes. And, he's the first person I think of when, a problem comes up. All I just say is, Father McGivney, help. You know better than I do. Bring this before the throne of God. And so we can really look, especially as knights and as knights' families. This is really everything that we have known about Father McGivney has now been confirmed by the highest authority of the Church. And we can look forward to him being Blessed Michael McGivney.
That's wonderful news, Brian. I usually close with an Irish blessing, but I think tonight I'd really like to close with the Canonization Prayer for Father McGivney. And it goes, God our Father, protector of the poor and defender of the widow and orphan, you called your priest, Father Michael J. McGivney, to be an apostle of Christian family life and to lead the young to the generous service of their neighbor. Through the example of his life and virtue, may we follow your Son, Jesus Christ, more closely, fulfilling his commandment of charity and building up his body, which is the church. Let the inspiration of your servant prompt us to greater confidence in your love so that we may continue to his work of caring for the needy and the outcast. We humbly ask that you glorify your servant, Father Michael J. McGivney, on earth according to the design of your holy will. Through his intercession, grant the favor that I now present. I'd like to present that there be some holy resolution to the unrest in our country. Brian, would you like to make an intercession?
I'd just like to intercede for all those who are looking for consolation in life, and through the priestly heart of Father McGivney, they may find it.
David?
And for my brother Mark, who has passed, I ask for the repose of his soul and that he's welcomed into heaven by Father McGivney and Jesus Christ our Lord.
Through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
Amen. In the Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Holy Spirit. Amen. Guys, I just want to say one more thing before we say goodbye. I became a knight because Michael J. Cianciello asked me. And I also became a member of the Father McGivney Guild because somebody asked me. So let's ask somebody to become a knight. Let's ask somebody to become a member of the McGivney Guild. And it's been a pleasure talking with you tonight, Brian.
Well, thank you, Dave and Dave. Quite a show. I appreciate it.